Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. As you guys know, we have returned from our trip in Doha, Qatar. We were able to interview 12 amazing global leaders, and we did miss a gentleman who we were able to finally catch up with today, and he's my guest, and I'll bring him in a second. I just do want to, of course, say a heartfelt thank you to all of you who are listening, that we've passed 100,000 downloads as we approach the holiday season. It's just incredible and humbling to know that we are having the critical conversations in higher ed and that you're listening. So thank you to everyone. But my guest today, when I say we had to catch up with him, he's global, so he's all over the place. We literally had to catch up with him because he was somewhere else, and now he's back where he's supposed to be. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Fernando Leon Garcia. He's president of CETYS University and also the president of the International International Association of University Presidents. Oh, I knew I was going to get it wrong. How are you, Fernando?
Great, and thank you for being persistent and that we were finally able to connect, and congratulations on achieving that milestone. Not many people can claim that they have reached that extensive an audience globally.
Yeah, truth be told, I had my mom listen 100,000 times. So it worked. Either way, we got there. How are you? First of all, CETYS University. Let's talk about CETYS first. Where is it located? Where are you? And talk about the university, what you do and how you do it.
Yes, very briefly, CETYS University is a higher education institution located in the state of Baja, California, Mexico. It is right next to one of the largest economies in the world, California. Of course, US, but California per se.
The fifth largest, I think. Yeah.
Yes. So the dynamics are very interesting and I believe unique. This is an institution that was founded 60 years ago. We're celebrating its 60th anniversary.
Congratulations.
And it was founded by the leaders of the region who at that point in time did not find and had higher education option in the region so that it could serve the purposes of the regions and promote community and regional and economic development. It was done in a way in which it is a special type of institution because it is, of course, focusing on the theme that was the topic in Doha, Qatar, our session on skills, but trying to instill as part of that development, the development of the whole person. A kind of a Mexicanized version of liberal arts education with a balanced focus on skills for business industry. This is an institution that has therefore served the region strictly speaking on the Mexican side, but that because of the dynamics has become increasingly binational and global. California, Baja California is also referred to the Cali-Baja region. And as you probably heard, it has the border that has the greatest number of crossings in the world, Tijuana, San Diego. So the dynamics are very interesting, and that does not refer to the population alone, but to the organizations and institutions that serve this region. CETYS is an institution that has 3 campuses, Tijuana, of course, Ensenada, Mexicali, and it has always worked very closely with the business and industry sector. It is an institution that has always tried to identify and develop talent, offer educational programs with high quality, initially focusing more on the Mexican side, but increasingly trying to validate its legitimacy in terms of quality abroad. Therefore, it's one of the few institutions that pursued and achieved US accreditation with the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. It is one of about 50 in the world outside of the US that has US accreditation. About 8,000 students across the 3 campuses. And we have a dynamic that is such that you do find an oddity. Typically, when we look at the flow of people, it is from south to north, and that happens, of course, or west or east. But because of our location and because we have accreditation, There are over 300 students from California that before the pandemic were crossing the border to study at our institution. And now during the pandemic, of course, this has been online, remote, but we suspect the numbers are going to continue despite the pandemic as most institutions move towards hybrid. So I think all told, it's an institution that is among privates, it's among the top 5 in Mexico. Among privates and public, it's among the top 10. And it has, again, increasingly tried to broaden its horizon, its reach, such that about 65% of the graduating class the last 3 years has done so, has completed their studies with some kind of international experience. We envision the region becoming a hub for the attraction and development of talent because of all the dynamics that we have there. And we're trying to position the institution so that we can move forward with that aspiration. I'm just completing my 12th year right now, and my affiliation with the institution has been renewed for an additional period. So we are in the midst of launching the next long-range plan. We just completed CETYS 2020. We're going to complete CETYS 2036. So all in all, you have an institution with 60 years of history that started local, started regional, started on the Mexican side, but that is now increasingly binational in most of the things it does. And it has global interaction and outreach. So I'll pause there just to see if there are other questions.
Oh, I got lots of questions. That's what I do here is ask those questions. So let me start with the Mexico and the Mexican labor force issues, as it were. You know, in the U.S., we understand fully that we have this need for upskilling and reskilling simultaneously. We have a group of folks or a growing anti-intellectualism movement against the value of a higher education. What's the temperature like in Mexico among the populace on their perceptions of higher education? That's the first question. And then secondarily to that, is there a battle for talent?
Well, I think that several things here. I think that overall, the impetus and positioning of higher education as an instrument for social progress and economic development is still there. Although there is some rhetoric and conversation with our current government in terms of doing that without forgetting about diversity and inclusion. So it's not totally discarded, but there are many issues and initiatives that are being promoted right now within the country that favor inclusion and diversity. Not that the inclusion and diversity are wrong, but I think that we need to make sure that we are offering not only access, equality of access, but also equality of results and success. And that means being able to get a reasonable placement and employment and job. So that's one thing. Second thing is that comparatively speaking, at least those that are accredited by the Mexican system of accreditation have less of an issue measuring and following up on employability than is the case in the US. I think that, yes, employability is measured, but quite a few of the institutions, colleges and universities in the US, they talk about development of the whole person instead of, or employability really down below. I think you need to do both. And so there's a greater awareness and greater push for employability being one of the things that we should be measured for. That said, going back to your question, in terms of skills, upskilling, reskilling, re-engineering, I think that there is a demand for that. And I think to the extent that you have a tradition of being linked to business and industry, you have less of an issue being responsive to it. If you have not been typically associated with business and industry and those dynamics, you might have a difficult time swallowing this and doing this in a more systematic manner. In our case, since we were founded, we've been connected to business and industry. So there have been procedures, there have been context, there's been interaction with business and industry. That it can be done better, of course. The accrediting process in the US, by the way, did allow us to be more systematic, such that any program, any major program review involves feedback from business and industry in terms of the relevance and the timing and how forward thinking are those skills and mindsets that we are promoting in the university. But on the other hand, there are other initiatives that we have launched, partially borrowing from best practices in the US and elsewhere, where we have advisory councils for each of our colleges. So we have folks who are not from within the university, who are academics from the US and elsewhere, and who represent business and industry, who meet a couple of times a year, who are discussing, commenting, suggesting things that we should be doing, such that at the very least, we are updating and upgrading what we offer. But on the other hand, we're also looking at other things that we should be doing, not only yesterday, but 3-5 years from now. So I think that the need is there, but I think, again, that those of us who have been historically more connected to business and industry have less of an issue. I think one of the major changes, and I'll stop there to see if you have more questions, involves the timeliness of some of these responses. Sometimes we're too slow in higher education. Sometimes we are more along the mindset of this is what I have to offer, relevant or not. And industry and business is saying, well, no, that's not what I need. I need it in another manner, such that the emerging concepts of badges, micro-credentialing, credentialing, are all things that we need to embrace and somehow incorporate. We know that there are outside vendors or third parties that are doing it on their own. I think, though, that there are some synergies that higher education institutions can and should look forward to, such that we don't need to do it alone if we want to be more responsive and relevant. I'll pause there, Joe, to see if there are other emerging questions based on what I said or other questions you have.
I'm gonna come back to a couple that I have, because I want to just switch topics on you just a tad, because you were talking about this being your 12th year at CETYS, and congratulations, and that you're going to have a continuation of your time there.
An additional period, 4 more years. Yeah,
4 more years. One of the things and one of the phenomenons that's been happening in higher education, as I'm sure you're well aware, especially at the presidential level, is a burnout. It's a burnout. It's a reimagining of a future. You know, when you're a college president, and I've talked to 130 or so of them, the coronavirus has really caused a lot of stress and pressure. It's almost turned a college president into a therapist to some degree, because they're taking care of students, they're taking care of your staff. People are coming to you saying, what are you going to do about this? And you're just reading the news like everybody else, and you got to come up with these answers, because it's students, it's families, it's the parents, it's the community, it's the businesses. It's affecting the college, affects the entire community. So you've doubled down. You're going to do another 4 years, and you're the incoming president of the association. What is it? The International Association
of University Presidents. Yes.
Which means you're even getting more involved in higher ed. How do you stay healthy? How has this affected you, if at all? And why do you have the passion to move forward?
Well, I think that there are several things. You know, one is that you have to look at leadership as something that's not about you. It's about the organization. It's about the university community you serve. And as such, you need to be very mindful about those that are there and that are part of your team. And you need to make sure that you are equipping them and empowering them so that they can help you and help the organization move forward. I think that a lot of people say, oh, gee, 12 years or 10 or whatever it was that we were talking about my presidential period. And I said, the reason the institution has been successful is because of the team I have. And it's because of the folks that we have continuously tried to instill continuous improvement philosophy, such that little by little, we've been moving into what some folks label succession planning. And that's making sure that you have a bench deep enough so that regardless of where you need some kind of change, you have the folks to do that. So I think it's, what allows me to remain, attentive, enthusiastic, my team, the existence of a vision, the fact that we have been able to work with quite a few of them so that there has been leadership development at different levels. In case you're familiar with this, there is, of course, the American Council on Education Fellows Program. If you haven't heard of it, just look at their website. But this is a program that was founded over 50 years ago with the intention of developing leaders at different levels. Generally, those who participate are at a dean's, director, associate vice president, but even vice presidential level. I participated in that program in the late 90s. I was the second Mexican to participate there. Francisco Marmolejo, whom you're familiar with.
Oh gosh, my good friend, Francisco.
Okay, yes, Paco, our dear Paco. So, he was the first Mexican. And so after our conversation, and Marlene Ross, the godmother of all fellows, we had a conversation. So I joined the program. But after that, right now, what I can tell you, Joe, is that at CETYS, we currently have 13 that have been through the program and are still at CETYS, or left CETYS, but I still have about at least 11 of those 13, they're still with us. So when you have folks who have gone through a program such as that, you have a very powerful group with which you can move forward, and where simple improvements or innovation and change are much easier to move forward with. So I have, a synergistic group. I call them evangelizers of innovation and change at the institution. So I think, all these are elements that are important. But on the other hand, of course, overwhelmingly institutions have some kind of governance. Mm-hmm. So being able to work with and have a very supportive board is essential, such that when something like COVID hits, in our case, an earthquake hit 4 months into my presidency, and where the board rallied around, which was a very impacting situation. And we tried to work and see how we could move the institution forward. Of course, there are moments where the division between what's strategic and what is management, what is operational, it might get diluted, but I think that overwhelmingly, when you have a board chairs that are very supportive to the institution and that can work with certain dynamics, and relevance with presidents, it's much easier to move forward. So I think that these are some keys. Understanding that as a leader, it's not about you, it's about the organization or the institution you're working for. It's about having and nurturing the team. It's about empowering. It's about making sure that others are growing and positioning themselves to help much further. And of course, governance, right? And,
so go ahead.
Just one more thought, because I did come into my presidency with that line of thought. Jim Collins talks about the importance of people and making sure you have the right people on the bus. A lot of times, it's not that you have to bring someone down from the bus and have them replaced with somebody else. It's just that for that specific period or that individual, there might have been a slight change you could have attempted, that you see a re-energizing, a renaissance in some way. And I think a good portion of the team I had, they were on the wrong seat for that time. So we just shifted and we agreed, and it's been overall very harmonious. So
That's
these are
great.
just some thoughts, as you try to exercise leadership, even in pandemic,
Yeah.
even during pandemic, it helps.
The EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Hey, everybody, head over to www.edupexperience.com, our website, where you're going to find all of the episodes that we've recorded categorized so that you can ensure that you're spending your time listening to the podcasts that are most important to you. You're going to see the reviews of our podcasts, the shows in our network, our partners, and a section on starter episodes. If you're new to the EdUp Experience, listen to those starter episodes and get a feel for how the podcast has evolved over time and our impact in the world. www.edupexperience.com. Well, so you're incoming president of the International Association of University Presidents. What is that organization beyond what it sounds like? And what's your role going to be as president to do?
Okay, well, first of all, this is an organization that was founded over 55 years ago with the base in the UK. And the initial thought, which continues now and we're trying to perpetuate, is that this group can be a forum for university leaders, vice chancellors, if you're in a Commonwealth or the UK system, presidents, if you're in the US, or chancellor for that matter, CEOs, if you will, leaders of organizations, he's and she's who have that charge. And the intention of this organization is to serve as a forum so that we can discuss key issues for colleges and universities from around the world, identify best practices, identify important trends, so that we are all better prepared regardless of whether you are in a developed country or a developing country, and that those synergies and convergences allow you to provide a more powerful support. So that's the overarching goal. Of course, depending on where you are and what stage of development higher education or the world happens to be, then there will be some recurrent and emerging issues. For example, some of the recurrent issues continue to be access. So as a leader, how can you provide access? As a leader, how can you provide or make sure that there is consistent quality and increasing levels of quality in that you offer? When you have pandemics or aspects that impact society and higher education, the real estate or technology bubble, the technology bubble in 2000, then the real estate bubble 2008, 2010, that impacted what we did, how we did it, and now the pandemic. So there's certain things then that you have to make sure that you are cognizant of, and that you are in a position to help other leaders move forward. Just to then highlight some of the things that I think we are going to try to address these 3 years. Before the pandemic, our platform was innovation and inclusion with quality, before the pandemic. And now it's recovery and reinvention in that context. And why do I say that? Because it's not that higher education institutions, whether you're addressing the skills issue or not, are going to die, they're going to die out. It's that we need to make sure that we embrace some of the challenges that are there and either decide to do them alone or partner with others so that we can provide society those solutions. So while overwhelmingly most of the colleges and universities in the world, and we're one of those, we were offering face-to-face, it's clear, totally face-to-face is not going to return. We are going to need to provide a mixture of hybrid and online. How much of that is going to depend on the degree and stage of development that each individual institution happens to be. But we're moving in that direction. What does that mean? Well, it means that whether we like it or not, we need to continue to work with faculty so that those who don't have the appropriate mastery of the pedagogical approaches, and I'm talking about pedagogical approaches, not the technology. Remember, technology is an instrument. It's not technology per se. It's technology as an instrument that you can use for pedagogical purposes, so that we can instill, promote, and help the students achieve some learning outcomes or competencies. So these are things that are going to change. Student success is going to change. Going back to diversity and inclusion, it's not about addressing diversity and inclusion because they're asking us to, but because these are ways of strengthening what we do and impact in society. You know, we need to address it. We need to embed it. We should look at these as a strength, not as a weakness if we address it. Okay. So these are some things that I suspect we're going to be having webinars, conversations, surveys, events, and where, of course, concurrently with this, leadership development. Yep. It's not only about those who are already at the helm, it's identifying those who are starting or those who have the potential for that. So the portfolio of activities that we have, we just had the executive committee meeting, the first one on Friday. So we had over 30 leaders from 25 different countries. So, you know, we try to be as broad as possible. It covered US, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, that only in the Americas, and it covered the UK, it covered France, it covered Austria.
Even just on the board, even if you just look at the board, the countries represented: Georgia, Austria, USA, yes. Mexico, Spain, yes. China, UK. Yes. It's truly, truly global.
Yeah. So there, you know, we said, okay, number one, we need to make sure that in addition to the triennial event where we have major exposure, we had over 400 institutions from 40 different countries in July. We have regional events. So we're going to offer regional events as part of the portfolio. Colombia, Egypt, Japan, the UK, as some of the major ones over the next 3 years. We're going to offer a leadership development program in Mexico City next summer. And the following summer, it'll be in China, because, you know, it's valid elsewhere. You need to make it, you need to reach different constituents. Mm-hmm. Then we're going to also begin what we're calling the Student Exchange Bank, which will try to promote the notion of or virtual mobility as part of the mix. We're going to explore the notion of borderless professor. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we're also going to try to make sure that we not forget that as leaders, it's about the students. So we're also going to try to organize some competitions that involve students in select themes. So these are just some of the instruments that we're going to be using, of course, trying to tap on innovation, inclusion, quality, you know, in a world where we need to increasingly provide the necessary hand-holding so that students can not only access, complete, but also be employed and be successful.
One of the and I want to transition now back to CETYS, and mm-hmm. You know, one of the things and one of the takeaways, and I've said this on a couple previous episodes, one of the takeaways I had from my time in Doha was that the international community, and I'm talking anybody that I spoke with that was not from the United States, mm-hmm. The way that they discuss higher education is of so much more value than not saying everybody in the US, but we have these conversations around the de-escalating value of higher ed. And in the international
Mhm.
community,
Mhm.
it was foundational to economic prosperity. And it was like, oh no, that we're going to put as many people into higher ed as we possibly can. And so
Mhm.
there's countries outside of the US are sort of catching up. And
Mhm.
we're very ethnocentric in the U.S. We think we have the best of everything. I mean, that's true, usually true. But you have 300 students that are coming from California to CETYS. What do you think makes CETYS so special that you have students looking outside of the U.S. At the education you provide?
Well, I think there are different factors, Joe. On the one hand, I think that it does show the value of having U.S. accreditation.
Yep.
If going through that process is intended to inform the general public or audience that you have and you meet the standards, just like any U.S. And so that's one. That's one. And I'm not listing them in order, but that's one, a very important one. Another one is that the level of quality is very well known. The linkages that the institution has with the business and industry sector, if you're looking at employability, is also very strong. The possibilities that you have for study abroad exchanges, enhancing your portfolio by going beyond just, there it's US and Mexico automatically, but there's an opportunity to go elsewhere. That's also a plus. But what's also a plus is that when you compare to the availability of certain majors that are impacted in California, especially if you're going to a public institution, the Cal State system or the UC system, it's not impacted. And from a tuition perspective, we're equivalent to, we're lower than the UC, we're slightly higher than the CSU, if you compare that to residents. We don't charge an additional amount because you happen to not be in Mexico. As you know, most state systems, what they do is, well, my residents have X, all others, they pay 3 times as much or 2 times as much. In our case, compared to the resident tuition, okay, it's below UC and slightly above CSU. So if you're talking at, is it accredited? Yes. Can I take part of my financial aid? Well, because we're accredited and we went through a validation process with the Department of Education, they can take part of their financial aid also. So, yes. Well, okay, so we'll go. Now, the other feature also, Joe, is that up until now, most of those who have decided to go south, they had some previous affiliation with Mexico. Their parents were from Mexico. They own businesses in Mexico. They studied in Mexico, or they during their childhood they were in Mexico, but now they're in the U.S. So that has also impacted. So it's a combination of aspects. But I think that again, when you say, well, don't you have community colleges in California? You do. Don't you have that in private? You do. So we must be doing something right. And some of these things that I've listed are definitely impacting and convincing students so that they are attending CETYS. Plus, we're also increasing the portfolio of programs that we're offering in English, in Mexico, but in English.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that it makes it easier for them.
That's great. And thank you for that. And as we're coming up on time, I want to ask you our 2 final questions that we ask every single guest. The first one is kind of an open mic moment for you. And that is, what did we not say about CETYS that you would like to say? Something maybe that you want to slide in, anything that you want, an event, just things in general, anything that you want to plug.
No, well, I think that this is an institution, again, that combines, I think, the best of what Mexico has to offer with what we believe are important best practices that you find in the US, such that it's an institution that is both developing the whole individual, but that is also minding and providing as possible and as relevant the skills that are necessary for employment and for the development in the border region. Our graduates are in 30 countries now. So although we're there, no, they're all over the place right now, and increasingly so. So I think that we are hoping that we can contribute so that the region can in fact achieve that status of a magnet for the attraction and development of talent in the future. So that's what I would say about CETYS.
And what do you think is the future of higher education?
Well, I think that first of all, higher education continues to have a future. That's very important.
Well said. Well
because
said.
there are some who say that that's not the case. Now, higher education is going to continue, but I think that continuity and continuation is going to be a function of the capacity of colleges and universities to, number one, reaffirm what AGB calls out. It says, yes, because of the pandemic, you might be quick to act and judge and look more at short-term financial considerations. Don't forget about what your mission and your commitment to quality happen to be. So as you're looking long-term, and as you're exercising what some leaders call your bifocal leadership, short, long, mission, quality, substantive, strategic, it is in that context that higher education is going to be able to evolve and increase its relevance under changing circumstances. And this involves not only technology, it involves other challenges that we face, such as providing more student support, etc. So I think, again, the future is not necessarily bright for higher education, but it has a future. We have our work cut out, and we need to remind ourselves that increasingly it's not only about the institution as such. There are increasingly other potential partners in society, in business and industry, that can help us migrate for that necessary change so that we can continue to be relevant and effective in what we do for society.
I love that, and it's perfect. And you brought him up, Dr. Marmolejo, who actually had an opportunity to moderate a panel he was on, and he said the same thing. You know what? All the prognosticators saying higher ed is going to slip into the sea and disappear forever. You know what? That's not going to happen. Does it have decreasingly less value? Yeah. Do we need to innovate around that perception? Absolutely. And will higher ed have a future? Just as you said, absolutely. And it's clear to me why you're going to do an amazing job as the president of the International Association of University Presidents, your experience, your thought process. Congratulations. We'll be watching closely. Thank you for coming on the show, sir. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Joe. And we wish you and your audience, wherever they are, very happy holidays right now, and a much better 2022. But in the meantime, we have to exercise caution, and make sure that the pandemic does not get the worst of us.
We can only hope. We only hope. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Fernando Leon Garcia. He's president of the CETYS University System. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp.